Guys, welcome back to our channel, hkklawoffices.com. I'm attorney Kyle Kaufman. I'm an attorney in the state of Wisconsin, and I'm coming at you today with this video on 6 tips from a judge in Wisconsin as it relates to children and their preference and what a judge considers about or thinks about that in child placement issues, all right? So before I get into that video, guys, if you like our page, please let us know. Subscribe to the page, leave a comment below, or put some questions in there, some comments. We're happy to hear from you and interact with you, and we love making videos for you. All right, guys, I'm excited to talk about this one. I watched an interview with a judge. This judge has been in practice for over 10 years in the state of Wisconsin, and this judge commented on 6 things that the judge considers when dealing with child's preferences as it comes to child custody and placement issues, okay? The first one that the judge considers is this. It depends, basically the judge says, it depends on the child and the reasons. So that tells me that a judge is getting to know your child and wants to know more about that child. And how does a judge learn about that? Typically, that's going to come through a hearing through the parents, right? The parents' testimony. It could be grandparents testifying about the child. It could also be a child advocate, like a guardian ad litem, who represents the best interest of the child, making commentary to the court about the child, or asking questions of witnesses that bring out the child's preferences and who this child is, right? Like their age, what they're interested in, how long they've been with other parents, what their relationship is like with other people, all right? So highly considerate of the particular child. So be careful when you go to court that you're spending time not just talking about the other parents, which I see a lot of parents do, right? You got to talk about your child. Well, who is this child? Explain that to the judge. Okay, reason number 2 is a court will consider these reasons that I talked about, right? So this judge gave an example. If there's a teenager whose preference is to live with a parent and that parent doesn't have a lot of boundaries or limitations on what the child can and can't do, well, that judge is probably going to give less preference to that teenager who prefers to live with that parent who doesn't have those boundaries. This is a tip from a judge. Okay, number 3 is the judge, and I like this comment, so wise. This judge said younger kids have a strong desire to make things fair. And I thought about that a little bit. I've been, for example, a soccer coach, right? And when I'm working with younger kids, those kids are very much into the rules. The ball's out, that was a foul, that was a handball, and they stop the play to let everyone know. Those kids have such an appreciation for fairness and playing by the rules. So when you think about that with your own kids or those kids that you've interacted with, those younger kids tend to come and express to people, I just want it to be fair. I just want to see mom, I want to see dad. And they might not have an appreciation that fairness doesn't really equate to best interest, right? So the judge is considerate of that, and that's a good thing if you're a person going into a courtroom to know that a judge has that mindset. Okay, number 5 is getting the preference of the child and how you get that. I think I jumped ahead. That's number 4. So number 4, getting the preference, right? Now, how do you do that? You don't bring a child into the courtroom. That's really not something that anyone wants to do, and put a child in front of 2 parents in a courtroom. So you're going to get that through what's called a guardian ad litem in Wisconsin. That's an attorney who represents the best interests of the child. And one of the duties of the guardian ad litem is to express to the court, this is what the child desires. That could be different from what the guardian ad litem is advocating, which is a best interest standard. So a guardian ad litem might say, child wants this, but I'm recommending something different, or it could be the same. All right, number 5 is another way to get help a judge decide what to do and child's preferences is through a child custody study. Some counties in the state of Wisconsin allow for that, where there's a more involved process. It does include a guardian ad litem, interviews extensively with parents and family members, perhaps other outside collateral sources, reviewing reports, and a complete custody study put together, okay? And then the 6th point from this judge on considering child preferences says, I will consider what a counselor has to say if a counselor is involved. However, the judge said, I really do that with caution because sometimes bringing the counselor into a courtroom setting or into that court process really can be detrimental to the relationship between the counselor and the child, which the whole point of counseling is counseling, right? Not that the counselor is there as a tool to express what the child wants. And now when the child hears that the counselor is telling confidential information essentially, right, to other people, it might compromise the relationship, particularly with an older child who would understand that and say, hey, wait a second, counselor, I thought I could come in here and talk to you about everything. Now you're out there telling the judge, a guardian ad litem, my parents, and it makes the relationship not really work. And one other point that this judge makes is that the person who doesn't like the decision made by the court, if it's relying on the counselor's words, right, that parent then has a strong desire not to keep that parent involved in counseling. They look at it as a loss. They look at it as, now that counselor is against me, and they're not a very strong advocate for that counselor or for counseling at all. So we have to be very cautious about that. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that. Those are 6 tips from a judge in Wisconsin about child's preferences as it comes to custody and placement. We'll see you next time.